friends, welcome back to the Finance Scribble. Today I'm going to kick off a FI case study series on my channel. At first, it'll be hypothetical scenarios of different people or families in various states and their financial situation. I'll take their numbers and walk through calculating their FI number with you. Eventually, I would love for you all to submit your numbers anonymously, of course, so it'll be more relevant for you. We'll start off with our FI number today, though. For anyone new to the FIRE community, FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. For us, we aren't necessarily retiring early, so we're just focusing on the FI part. FI means having enough wealth to live a life of comfort without the need to work. I like this simple definition. Basically, if you have enough in your investments to cover your living expenses for the rest of your life, work can be optional. It's very important to first define what FI means to you and why. For us, financial independence means we get to do more traveling, do more fun things like create videos for this channel, spend time with our kids that we don't have yet, but we do want, or go be a barista at a coffee shop for fun. I love drinking and making coffee, so it would be a fun little side gig for a few hours a week. It allows us the freedom to do all that and not be tied down to making a traditional income. Our goal isn't to retire early, but instead to spend our time doing what we find most valuable and fulfilling. That can look very different for you. So ask yourself, why do you want to achieve FI and what do you want to do with that freedom? Without the reason, you're going to lose momentum along the way and stop. So, how do you calculate your FI number? A very simple formula is to take your annual expenses and multiply it by 25. This is what is known as the 4% rule. The 4% rule is a rule of thumb that suggests retirees or a person can safely withdraw the amount equal to 4% of their savings or investments in retirement without running out of money. So the first step is to figure out what your annual expenses are to insert into that formula. We separated ours into fixed expenses, or we like to think about it as expenses that we still have to pay even if we lose our jobs. Then we have our variable expenses, or ones that we could pare down, completely remove, or potentially increase if we wanted to. It gives us a clear picture of what we could cut back on if either or both of us lose our jobs. Now, this is prior to FI, of course, so the 9 to 5 income is still very important. In fixed expenses, you could include things like a mortgage, car payment, insurance, bills, and utilities, internet perhaps. In variable expenses, you could have things like groceries, eating out, gas, entertainment, coffee, wine, haircuts, shopping, all of that. Our estimated annual expenses in 2023 is 96,000 or 8,000 on average per month. We take that and times it by 25 to get 2.4 million, or 2.4 million times 4% equals 96,000. So now you can take the 2.4 million and how much you estimate you'll invest per month, put it into a compound interest calculator to figure out how many years it'll take you to achieve 5. But is a, there's a big caveat here. It's that this is a very basic benchmark. It gives us a great starting point, but it doesn't account for changes in our lives. What if our expenses increase over the next few years before we reach FI? Or what if I go get a barista job and make a small income each year? Or what if I get a huge promotion and can invest way more each month? That's why my FI calculation goes a little deeper and more complex than that, but this is a simple formula that is a great starting point. With that in mind, I estimated some additional expenses we'll have in the next few years to help calculate our FI number more accurately. We want to get our forever home in the next 5 to maybe 8 years and anticipate we'll spend an additional 36,000 per year on top of our current mortgage. So about 6,000 per month on the mortgage. We plan to have one, two, maybe two kids and anticipate that expense to start possibly next year, hopefully. Last year when we reach last year. Lastly, when we reach FI and leave our 9 to 5 jobs where there's employer sponsored healthcare, we'll need to purchase our own in the marketplace, and estimating that will cost us about 6,000 per year. All of these are huge estimates, but it's a good starting point, and we can adjust as numbers become more clear over the next few years. Now that we've thought of all the nuances and details, I built a spreadsheet to help me run the calculations. It takes into account our assumptions of how the market will perform, as well as inflation, and combine them with assumptions of our own personal finances and situation. I'll walk you through my spreadsheet in more detail. We estimate that the market will have an average return of 7%. Historically, the market on average has a 10% return, but I like to be a little bit more conservative. We have inflation at 3, and I know it's been way higher over the last couple of years, but again, historically, it's been around 3%. Then we have our current 2023 invested assets. This includes our 401ks, IRAs, and brokerage accounts. We estimate that our annual pay raise will be around 5% for both of us. Next is our percentage of savings invested. Anything left over after expenses is our savings, and we estimate that we invest 90% of it. This number is a little squishy since we sometimes do put a little more in our sinking fund or cash buckets, but it balances out since we don't account for employer match in our amount invested. Then we have our current annual expenses, and then the remaining 3 are the estimated additional expenses that we'll have before and at FI that I talked about previously. Now, this is where the fun starts. At least it's fun for me. I start inputting the numbers and create calculations in each column to account for all those items I just mentioned on top. I color coded where the additional expenses will show up in the calculations. So starting from left to right, I have the year listed. Then the annual salary column is calculated by taking our current salary of 312K. We actually just got our raise this year, and increase it by 5% per year. Then I calculated what our take home pay would be after 401k and HSA deductions, healthcare costs, taxes, all of that. For us, it's been around 70% of our salary, so that's the number I used. And then I have annual expenses that are impacted by inflation. So basically anything that's not a mortgage or car payment where the interest rate is locked in and doesn't change, even if there's inflation. For us, our non-inflation expenses is just our mortgage, so that's 36K. Then we're left with 60K that would be impacted by inflation. The inflation expenses get 3% inflation added year over year. We then calculate our annual savings by subtracting our take-home pay by our annual expenses. And like I said before, we estimate we'll invest about 90% of our savings, and that's how we got the annual invested amount. We combine that with our current total invested amount of about 514,000 to get our total invested column. This column also adds in the 7% return from the market year over year. Then we see how much we could get out of our investments if we applied the 4% rule. The Find FI column is basically seeing where our annual expenses match our or almost match the amount we can withdraw under the 4% rule. You can see in the yellow highlighted row that we would hit FI in the year 2035. But a big caveat also is that we don't think/want to completely not do anything during FI. So we estimate we'll we will earn about 50K per year combined in whatever we decide to venture into. So that lowers our expenses to 116,000 in the year 2035. I like to be pretty conservative with this too, so I would feel much more comfortable if we did 3.5% withdrawal instead of 4. That's what you see in the last column. You can see that if we have 50K coming in each year, we can hit FI in 2033 with a 3.5% withdrawal rate and a total of 3.4 million invested. I rounded up, but there you have it. Our FI number is 3.4 million. We need to hit this amount in our investments in order to reach financial independence. Our calculations show that we can achieve this in 10 years if we invest like we have planned and the market doesn't go too terribly south. Of course, this does not account for any job changes or promotions, so this is something we will continue to adjust and update probably once a year. That was probably a little bit more complex than you signed up for, but if you found the video helpful, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and come back weekly for new videos. Thanks for watching. Happy scribbling. Bye!